Hi, welcome to this session of LDSPMA. My name is Janine Simons, and my presentation is Anatomy of a Manuscript, Bringing Your Nonfiction Outline to Life. Have you ever felt dismissed for an accomplishment or had someone downplay all your time, effort, and resources that you put forth to achieve something? An apocryphal story describes just such a situation. It is told that sometime after Christopher Columbus's voyage to the New World, he was sitting with a group of men who were dismissing his achievement. Basically, they were saying that since so many people had made the same voyage since his initial journey, that anybody could do it. At this point, and this is where the story truly becomes apocryphal, Columbus reaches into his bag and pulls out an egg. With the egg in hand, he challenges the men to balance it on its end. Once again, they ridicule him, saying that it's an impossible task. But Columbus encourages them to try, and the egg is passed from man to man, each one failing in his attempt. As the egg comes back to Columbus, he takes it and taps it on the table where it lands and sticks perfectly. He then teaches them a lesson. The impossible becomes possible once you are shown the path. This engraving here from the mid-18th century is called Columbus Breaking the Egg. The term Egg of Columbus now refers to a seemingly impossible task that becomes easy once understood. So if you feel like your path to completing your nonfiction work seems impossible, we're going to work together today to make that path clear and attainable. Throughout this session, you will have the opportunity to not only think about your work, but to organize and plan it out. While this is not a workshop per se, my hope is that each of you will leave this session knowing your next step, if not your next several steps. We will work through each of the following areas. You'll have time to stop the recording along the way to record your thoughts using this worksheet. Brainstorming your thoughts and writing down your ideas will help you on this journey. But if you don't know into which category to place your manuscript, how are you going to proceed? You may know that you're not writing a cookbook or a travel guide, for instance, but you may not know exactly where it fits. So let's examine the different genres of nonfiction. How many do you think there are? There might be different opinions on this, but the all-wise internet gave me this many. While there may be some overlap among these genres, and there are likely many more not included here, do you see your genre in this list? Are there other genres that you would add that are not shown here? Now that you know which direction you're headed, we're going to dive into the world of medicine by comparing anatomical systems with components of crafting a nonfiction manuscript. Since most of us are not skilled surgeons, let's watch this short video to help us prepare to make those comparisons.
Sponge.
Dr. Kalarjian, report to OR.
Forceps. Tweezers.
Look what's new in the new operation. The sounds are silly, and the anatomy parts are so wacky, you just never know what you'll pull out next. Operation, the silly skill game sure to keep you in stitches.
In your own attempts to create your manuscript, you might also have some unexpected experiences along the way where things don't go exactly as you planned and you have to make changes. My job today is to help you prepare for those surprises and avoid that dreaded buzzer as often as possible. With all analogies, these are not perfect and they will fall apart at some point. So please know that I will be referring to the most basic components of these body systems to make our comparisons. But I think there's much we can learn from anatomical systems and how they relate to writing a book. The first three body systems we will look at are the circulatory system and how it corresponds with the overall theme, the skeletal system and its connection with an outline or table of contents, and the muscular system, and what we can learn about transitions that will help move your work forward. The circle of blood transports life-giving matter throughout our bodies. The circle of words is an overall theme of your manuscript and basically does the same thing. What is the main idea that you want to communicate to your reader? What is the key takeaway which permeates every chapter? And the one message that you want your readers to remember. Every chapter should point to this main theme, and if a chapter doesn't do that, then why is it even in your manuscript? And the first place to communicate this overall theme is before your reader even opens the book, with the title and subtitle. Shakespeare's Juliet said that names or labels don't really matter, that a rose called by any other name would smell just as sweet. But when it comes to your title and subtitle, a name means everything. In nonfiction, as opposed to fiction, you want your readers to know what your book is about. The title and subtitle is the best place to start. So let's look at the Egg of Columbus story and its lesson of making the impossible possible, and discover a few genres, titles, and subtitles that could use this story as their overall theme. So think about which genre the following 3 fictitious books would be placed. The Egg of Columbus, Overcoming the Grip of Addiction. The Perfect Souffle and Other Impossible Egg Recipes. And The Great American Heist, The Impossible Theft of 500,000 Eggs. Well, we can clearly see how the impossible to possible theme could apply to the self-help book of Overcoming Addiction, or a cookbook of making impossible egg recipes. Perhaps the heist book would be more of a how-to manual than a true crime book. By the way, this heist really did take place earlier this year when the price of eggs skyrocketed. Neither the eggs nor the culprits were ever found, and to my knowledge, no one has ever written a book about this. So feel free to steal this idea if you would like to. Enough talk about fictitious books. Now it's your turn. Go ahead and pause the recording to write down the genre and overall theme of what you're working on. Then consider a working title or subtitle if you don't already have one. Out of my 3 books, just one retained my initial title. The other 2 titles changed multiple times. So don't overthink this process. You can always change the title and subtitle later, and probably will. Without bones in our skeletal system, we would be a mushy pile of internal organs. Without an outline or subsequent table of contents, a manuscript would be the same messy pile of thoughts, words, and ideas. Neither would be a pretty sight. The outline in which you place your manuscript is the internal bone structure. The skeletal scaffolding carries the weight of the work. By working with an outline, you can see whether your topic is too broad-shouldered or too thin-hipped. Make your book easy for your reader to follow. I noticed at signings of my first book, He Marked the Path, Following the Savior on the Pathway to Peace, that people looked at the cover and then, if they were still interested, would turn to the table of contents. I do the same thing. Perhaps you do as well. This book is based on 2 Nephi chapter 4, which is sometimes called the Psalm of Nephi. I organized the book as a pathway with steps forward to indicate the principles that lead to peace, and steps back to refer to habits that lead us away from peace. You can see how the different sections in my book communicate this. The first 2 steps forward talk about finding peace in Holy Writ, or scriptures and other inspirational writings, and finding peace in pondering. But the next section, 3 steps back, talks about losing direction through despair, losing our way in the darkness, and losing opportunity through transgression. Unlike a work of fiction, as we said, you more than likely want your reader to know where you're going. But don't worry, you don't need to reveal everything in your table of contents. There'll be plenty of surprises along the way. Now it's your turn. Pause the recording and write down some ideas on how to organize your work. It will definitely include chapters, but may also include sections. How can you take the broad topic, which is your overall theme, and divide it up into manageable chunks? Is there a unique way to organize your manuscript that ties into the mood, tone, or direction of your book, much like I organized mine as a pathway? Now on to the muscular system. While few of us will ever be competitive bodybuilders, we all rely on our muscular system to do any task, whether large or small, from wiggling a finger or running a marathon. Muscles are needed to propel our body forward. Likewise, a manuscript needs literary muscles to move the reader along. These include both large and small transitions. On a large scale, transitions move the reader from chapter to chapter or section to section. On a small scale, transitions between sentences and paragraphs are just as important. A nonfiction book can be just as much a page turner as a work of fiction. What is it that keeps the reader going? What propels your nonfiction story? And how can you build suspense and interest no matter the genre? Think about what nonfiction books have kept your attention and interest to keep reading until the very end. When I asked in the LDSPMA Facebook group for examples of nonfiction page turners, several people mentioned The Devil in the White City, where the magic of the 1893 Chicago World's Fair is contrasted with the presence of a serial killer. This juxtaposition between the two leaves readers on the edge of their seats, wondering in which direction the following chapter will take the story. Historical books, which contain themes of impending disaster, crime, drama, intrigue, or mystery, naturally lead the reader to wonder what's going to happen next, and frequently include those chapter-ending cliffhangers. Which begs the question, do you think other nonfiction works can really be page-turners? I believe this is absolutely true, especially when they include anything that offers enough interest to keep the reader going. In my informal Facebook query, people mentioned a variety of genres, including self-help, motivational, and spiritual development, in addition to historical books. As the title states, this video from book marketing expert Julie Broad offers suggestions on how to write page-turning nonfiction and how to craft an experience for your reader. We will discuss several of these ideas in greater detail later in the presentation, but I think now is a good time to watch it.
Open up with action and emotion. Instead, start with the juiciest part and work backwards. If your book is about overcoming burnout, start with the gruesomest story you have on how burnout nearly killed you. A lot of books might start off going, burnout is killing the workforce and the solution isn't to help your employees work less. It's okay. So why don't you try saying something like, I was lying on the bathroom floor at 2 a.m., my laptop was still open, that email was half written, and I couldn't get off the floor. My whole body felt weighed down, and that's when I realized I can't keep going like this. And enter your burnout story. Another thing is to use AI, but don't write like AI writes. In a world where everyone is using AI for everything, it's never been more important to be a human. This means you need to bring in your personal stories, your expertise, and yes, your emotion. Because the very thing that will make your book unique and something that will have people talking is you. Speaking of standing out in the crowd, make every chapter something that stands out. Don't be like that album that we all bought where there was only one good song. Make every chapter a great song. As you finish a chapter, ask yourself, would this make a great article for LinkedIn or Medium? Or would it be a great talk that you can stand on stage and give this chapter as a talk? All right, final thing, use unexpected analogies. Let's not use the old tried and true analogy. You know, one of the ones that comes to mind is creativity is like a muscle. The more you use it, the stronger it gets. Well, instead of saying that, find your own version. Creativity is a toddler, wild, unpredictable, and always better when you let it play. So find your own way to say things. You know, another one in the writing world is the pen is mightier than the sword. Instead, you could say tweets topple tyrants faster than tanks. Now your ideas are going to stick. Writing a nonfiction book that stands out, it's not about dumping knowledge. It's about crafting an experience for your reader.
Now it's your turn. What do you think about her suggestions? Do you think they could work for you? Are there other ideas that came to mind of writing page-turning nonfiction? Take a few minutes to write down some strategy to keep your readers engaged in your manuscript. At the end of each chapter in my books, I've included self-reflection questions that address the main theme of that particular chapter. Could thought questions at the end of your chapters do the same thing, then help carry the reader into the following chapter? What about those cliffhangers? Is there a way you could incorporate them into your work? The next sections we'll discuss are the digestive system and how to avoid blockages in your work, the endocrine system, which can help you look at the mood and emotional impact of your writing, and the respiratory system, and knowing when to lay it on thick and when to let it breathe. The digestive system breaks down food into simple nutrients, removes toxins, and if functioning properly, allows for a healthy flow without blockages. Why did I choose to include this unappetizing system to compare to writing a manuscript? Because sometimes you have to deal with the disgusting parts of the process, starting with the actual writing of your work. Sometimes you feel like you cannot swallow another minute, much less an hour of writing. While writer's block is not unique to nonfiction, I think addressing this proverbial elephant in the room would be helpful for our discussion here. I used to think that having writer's block was inevitable, that there was no way of escaping it, and it was going to happen to me regardless of what I did. But I've changed my mind. I believe that you can actually create writer's block by merely thinking about it and dwelling on it. Just because we're not as productive one day as we were yesterday doesn't necessarily mean we're blocked. So here are a few ways I have found to address this nemesis in my life. Since we're talking about the digestive system, allow yourself to write crappily. I don't even know if that's a word. Every once in a while. Don't be afraid to throw down whatever comes to mind. It doesn't have to be perfect that first go around. That's why it's called a draft. You'll have plenty of time later to figure out how to organize everything. As writers, we tend to forget that rewrites and edits are part of the writing process. If you spend too much time analyzing how it's all going to come together in the end, you will stifle your creativity and you will have writer's block. While writing is a solitary experience for the most part, you don't have to do it alone. Being accountable to someone else, whether through a writing challenge, group, or having a writing buddy, can be a great way to stay on track. I joined a 60-day writing challenge earlier this summer. Every day I recorded my word count on a spreadsheet. While not a competition, it was highly motivating to see how others in the challenge were progressing. I quickly learned that I was never going to write as much as others in the group, but I could control how much I wrote. I set the goal to write every day, which is exactly what I did, and ended up completing my third book, Embracing God's Timing, ironically enough, well ahead of schedule. And it is now available. Lastly, consider what will help make your personal writing process more comfortable and productive. This could include the time, the place, environment that will help tap into your creative juices. Once you have addressed blockages you may experience in the actual writing process, you need to eliminate blockages within your writing itself. Literary blockages cause the reader to consider if they want to keep reading at all. Have you ever been reading a book and come to a part that just caused you to stop because it was a plot, not because it was a plot twist, but because it didn't make sense or didn't go with the theme of the book or chapter and just seemed to come out of left field? What do you do when you hit one of these literary brick walls? Blockages can happen in large chunks. A whole chapter can be a block. You want to have a continual literary flow throughout your work. That doesn't mean you can't include plot twists or concepts that cause your readers to think, wow, I've never thought of that before. Those are strategies that will help motivate your reader to stay with you. Like nutrients in the body, large portions of any information that you want to communicate in your manuscript must be broken down to avoid blockages and allow for an easy flow of your message. How easy is your book to digest? You need to avoid literary obstructions by giving any details or facts slowly enough to allow readers adequate time to absorb the information. Be mindful that blockages can also happen on a much smaller scale. This can include grammatical errors or typos, including misspelled words, but it can also mean overused words. That's exactly what happened to me when I read a friend's book, a post-apocalyptic novel, which is not something I would normally read. But I wanted to be supportive of his first effort, so I bought the book and dove in. Very early in the book, I was introduced to the protagonist, a woman who, in his words, had steel blue eyes. This clued me into her grit and determination to persevere through the violence she encountered. That would have been fine if he had not used this phrase several times in nearly every chapter. He used the same repetition with other descriptive words and phrases. I really tried to get through the whole book, but I couldn't. I finally stopped, turned to the last chapter to read how it all worked out. Just because a word or phrase works well the first or second time doesn't mean you can repeat it ad nauseum. If your reader senses you are overusing words or phrases or is distracted by too many typos or consistency errors, their attention will be drawn away from your overall theme and they will lose interest, just like I did. Now that you've identified what blockages, both large and small, look and feel like, what can you do to avoid them? Just like a clogged drain in your house, you cannot ignore blockages in your writing. The first way to address them is to be vulnerable. You have to be willing to accept hard truths about your writing and look at your work with new eyes. You need to be open and even thick-skinned about your manuscript and not be offended if something just doesn't work. I found that one of the best ways to identify blockages, both large and small, is to read my book out loud. Blockages will reveal themselves if you shine the light on them. Otherwise, they'll stay hidden. But here's a caution. Read slowly and pay attention as you read. Listen to every word. You know your work well enough that it can be easy to miss errors that will trip up your reader. Another important way to detect blockages is to have someone else read your work. These could be professionals that you hire to read your manuscript, but they also could include trusted friends, the very people that will end up reading it. But this also comes with a caution. Don't ask friends or family members who will tell you how perfect your book is. That's not what you want or need. I tell my beta readers to be brutal. I want to know anything that is confusing or doesn't make sense. You have to trust that if your readers are getting stuck, then there's something you need to change. That doesn't mean you have to make all changes that people suggest. It's still your manuscript. But having the opinion of others is crucial. Don't ignore their input. Lastly, we must be willing to let go of what is not working. To say, I really love this story or this idea or this concept, but for some reason, it just doesn't work. And then take it out. And if you've ever had to do that, you know how painful that can be. For my second book, Stones to Shine in Darkness, I was looking for the perfect story for one particular chapter. I felt inspired to write about an experience one of my children had gone through. It was a sensitive topic, but I felt it perfectly described the principle I was wanting to share. I wrote out the thoughts and shared it with my child, seeking their permission to use it in my book. They were incredibly gracious, saying that they were fine with my desire to include it. I was thrilled. The book then sat for another 4 years until I was ready to publish it. When it was time, and as I reviewed what I had previously written, I realized that this child's life had changed dramatically and the story just didn't work anymore. It was difficult for me to take it out, but I knew I had to. In time, I found another story that worked just as well and probably better. But I didn't just toss out that first story completely. I put it in a file of ideas to be used later. I encourage you to do the same. A particular chapter or part of one or an idea may not be perfect for your current project, but could fit seamlessly into another one. Now it's your turn. Take some time to think about what you can do to improve your writing environment, as well as identify blockages in your writing. How can you maintain a better flow of your actual writing process as well as your manuscript? One of the functions of the endocrine system is to regulate moods. Do you know what the mood or emotional impact of your manuscript is or what you want it to be? A dry statistic-filled book definitely has its place, but most readers want to be moved or touched in some way. How do you feel about your work? How do you want your reader to feel? Remember the literary admonition by poet Robert Frost. No tears in the writer, no tears in the reader. No surprise in the writer, no surprise in the reader. In my former career as a junior high French teacher, I used to tell my students that if their essays written in simple French using the language that they knew made me laugh cry, get angry, want to throw something, or want to throw up, or feel any other strong emotion, they would get a higher score. And I had students that made me feel all those emotions, including, I might add, one young man who tenderly wrote about the death of his little brother to cancer. But you might ask, not all topics lend themselves to eliciting an emotional response, right? How about a book on one of the most boring subjects, punctuation? Well, British author Lynn Truss found a way to transform that yawn-worthy subject into a page-turner. The title of this book can be explained in the following story. A panda walks into a cafe. He orders a sandwich, eats it, then draws a gun and fires 2 shots into the air. Why? Asks the confused waiter as the panda makes his way toward the exit. The panda produces a badly punctuated wildlife manual and tosses it over his shoulder. I'm a panda, he says at the door. Look it up. The waiter turns to the relevant entry in the manual and sure enough finds an explanation. Panda, large black and white bear-like mammal, native to China, eats, comma, shoots and leaves. The book is riddled with humor, puns, and hilarious scenarios, all to teach about punctuation. Here's what she had to say about the relationship among several of our most beloved punctuation marks. In the family of punctuation, where the full stop, or period, is daddy and the comma is mummy, and the semicolon quietly practices the piano with crossed hands, the exclamation mark is the big attention deficit brother who gets overexcited and breaks things and laughs too loudly. Who wouldn't fall in love with punctuation and want to use it correctly, I might add, after reading this book? So if a book about punctuation can elicit emotion, what can you do to bring emotion into your nonfiction book? One of the most powerful ways I have found to incorporate emotional impact into nonfiction work is through storytelling. And I personally feel that true narratives accomplish this much better than fictitious ones. When I first published He Marked the Path 20 years ago, I included several made-up stories. When I reissued the book in 2024, I replaced those made-up stories with true accounts, either from my own life or the lives of others, and I feel that the impact was much greater. I believe this is because true stories allow for increased empathy with other people's experiences. They link principles to real life situations and are remembered long after any lesson taught. Keep a list of impactful stories from your own life, and you'll be surprised to see how you can use them in your writing. Now it's your turn. Record how you can bring emotion and feeling into your work, even if you think your topic would not lend itself to do so. What impactful stories have you had, whether tragic, embarrassing, disgusting, funny, any story that brings in strong emotion, and see how you could elicit greater emotion in your book by including them. Don't forget the respiratory system of your manuscript. Help it breathe and give it life. If it's too heavy, you'll overwhelm your reader. And if it's too light, a potential reader may pass on or pass out to another selection. Know when to lay it on thick and when to let up a bit. Going back to the power of stories, and since we've been covering a lot of ground here and I don't want to overwhelm you, I'd like to tell you a story, if you will indulge me. If you're comfortable, close your eyes for a few moments and relax, or focus on this picture as I tell you an experience I had. This past summer, I hiked the Timpanogos Cave Trail in Utah every week. As I got out of my car at the trailhead each morning, I took a moment just to breathe. The air was cool, flowing gently down the canyon, the sun just coming up over the mountains. I heard the welcome call of birds and was enveloped by the scent of pine. I knew before too long I'd go back to my hectic life, but for the next little while I could relax, breathe in, breathe out, and reset for the rest of my day. Go ahead and open your eyes. Are you ready to move on? Let's go. Like a breath of fresh air in the mountains, your manuscript also needs to breathe. You can do this by incorporating unique ideas and getting rid of those overused ones that everybody is familiar with. and by giving breaks from heavy content from time to time, and when appropriate, using comic relief. And this is not limited to just the ha-ha funny moments. Any shift in focus to lighten or change up the mood will do the same thing. Let's go back to The Devil in the White City. Its subtitle is Murder, Magic, and Madness at the Fair That Changed the World. The book balances the innocence of the fair with the horror of a mass murderer who took advantage of people coming to Chicago for the festivities. If the author had just focused on this man right here and his murderous rampage, it probably would have been too heavy. Showing the contrast of the magic of the fair, a cultural phenomenon with all its delights and wonders, with a terrifying tale going on at the exact same time, gives the reader a chance to catch their breath every once in a while. And on a side note, I might add, combining these two aspects of this event actually helps to heighten the horror. But if the book had been all about the horror, it would have been overwhelming. Having that contrast between the two allows the reader to experience and absorb both sides of the story. Now it's your turn. Does your manuscript have the potential to be overwhelming for a reader? What can you do to change up the mood from time to time and to keep your readers from either passing out or hyperventilating? I've listed here 2 more body systems that we haven't discussed yet. While we will touch on these only briefly, they are an important part of the writing process. The body's nervous system is the communication network, sending messages to the brain when pain, cold, heat, or other sensations are present. How does this relate to our discussion today? It could serve as a reminder that we need to know your audience, the very people you want to communicate with. Who are you writing to and for? What are their interests, background, and experience? Consider focusing on the average person in this demographic as you write your manuscript, since you obviously cannot accommodate everybody in the spectrum. The lymphatic system, which is concerned with protecting and defending your body against disease, could focus on protecting your work, standing up for what you have created, and like Columbus, not letting anyone dismiss your efforts. If you don't stand up for yourself, no one else is going to do it. So now, let's play a quick round of Jeopardy to learn about yet another system. The categories are What's for Lunch, Creators Network, Welcome to LDSPMA, Body Systems 101, and Where are the bathrooms? Let's take Body Systems 101 for 500, Alex. The answer is the body system associated with the hair, skin, and nails. Anyone? Make sure your response is in the form of a question, and bonus points if you know how to pronounce it correctly. What is the integumentary system? That is correct. So what does this system make you think of as it relates to our discussion today? As we're talking about the skin, I think book covers is the topic that we can look at here now, which is a whole presentation in and of itself. A book cover gives multiple clues about the content of your book. The title and subtitle communicate that overall theme that we have been discussing, while the photo, artwork, and design could help the reader feel a sense of direction as to where you're taking them on this literary journey. If so inclined, you could design your covers yourself or have the help of an artistic friend or family neighbor. My cousin, who is a graphic designer, helped me with these, or hire a professional. In any event, whether we're talking about pathways to peace, holding on to the light of Christ, or embracing God's timing while in the sands of mortality, a good book cover is essential. Which brings us to our final body system for the day, the reproductive system. First, I think this system could refer to a second or third book after an initial manuscript, or maybe a box set of several related books released at the same time, kind of like having twins or triplets. Like some women who, after giving birth, swear they will never do that again, some writers wonder if they have more than one book in them due to the pain, effort, time, and discomfort in bringing forth the first. But beyond this analogy, I think there is a connection that is even more important. A recognition that you are writing a unique literary creation that the world has never seen before. At conception, a new human is created. The same is true of your work. That first idea, however small, grows into something wonderful and unimaginable. In a world where AI is everywhere, it's important to remember that AI is just that, artificial. Use it wisely. I use it to create this image, but never let it replace your irreplaceable voice, gifts, and talent.
Write like no one's ever going to read it. Yeah, you heard me right. It's the same as dance like nobody's watching, or like eating chocolate and not caring about the calories. The freeing kind of crazy. Every mentor and experienced writer I've ever crossed paths with has offered the same piece of advice. Forget the world, write for yourself. But hi, President of People Pleasers Anonymous over here. I mean, surely they don't expect me to just, not care. In my office, there's a little note that stares me down. Are you holding back? It's a nudge, not just about rewrites, but about diving deep. Because let's face it, rewrites aren't the fun, montagey moments we see in the movies. They're the raw, messy, why am I doing this again type. But between you and me, the mess is almost always what leads to the magic. So, here's to writing without filters, even if my inner perfectionist cringes at the thought. After all, the best stories aren't crafted by guidelines. They're crafted by gumption.
There were those who thought Columbus's accomplishment wasn't that big of a deal. Don't let those same naysayers get under your skin. The theme of this conference is Our Work, His Glory. You owe it to yourself and the world to bring your manuscript to life. So what's holding you back? Take courage and go for it. Thank you.